Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Emily and this is my Thrifty Kitchen. So this week we are doing an entire week of meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner to feed my family for $50. My family is just my husband and I, and we have two small kids, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. So some of these meals might not be enough to feed your family, or if it's just you, this might be enough food to feed you for 2 weeks. I'm hoping just to give you some ideas and maybe share some inspiration for you in your own kitchen. As usual, I'm allowing myself use of my pantry staples like seasonings and condiments, but I did purchase some pantry ingredients in this haul just to make it a little more realistic. This morning I went to Walmart and Aldi, so I'm going to stop talking and show you what I got. Okay, so let's start with Aldi. I got this thing of bread, 2 things of ground turkey, pancake mix, some granola, cheese melt. I like this generic one at Aldi better than the one at Walmart, and it's cheaper than the one at Walmart too, so that works. And did I get anything? Oh yeah, this chili powder, and I think that's it from Aldi. So then moving on to Walmart, I got the 5-pound bag of potatoes, chicken nuggets, chicken quarters, excuse my child in the background bashing things, margarine, flour, gallon of milk, green beans. These are 76 cents a can. When I saw that, I about lost it. The smaller can of corn, the seasoned diced tomatoes. I got the one with green peppers, celery, and onions. Jar of Alfredo sauce, some shells, linguine pasta, a pound of rice, a pound of pinto beans, a pound of carrots, a head of lettuce, some Greek yogurt, plain. I got 6 bananas, an onion, 2 Roma tomatoes, and some broccoli. I was going to get the 2-pound bag of frozen broccoli, but I'm honestly just kind of bored with it. It always is kind of mushy, and I just really wanted some fresh broccoli, so that's why we went ahead and did this. My total for Aldi was $15.55, and my total for Walmart was $35.24, which brings my grand total for everything to $50.79, but I feel like I did pretty good for 50 bucks. Yeah, this is everything, and I'm really excited to put some meals together this week to show you guys. Now that you saw everything that I got, I am going to start today. It is a little before 10 o'clock. I am going to get some prep done just to make things easier for myself this week. I was also not going to start the meals until tomorrow just to keep it easier, but I have to make dinner anyways, so everything's going to be split up a little bit. I hope that's okay. And great news, as I was going through everything, I realized I ran out of maple syrup. So I guess that's just normal life. So in order to use that pancake mix that I got, I am going to make some brown sugar syrup, but that's super simple, and I'll show you how to do that too. To start everything out, I'm going to make some yogurt in my Instant Pot. I wanted a few different dairy products this week, but didn't have money in the budget, so I'm making them myself. I sanitize the Instant Pot by bringing a couple cups of water to pressure, then washing the pot insert in the gasket. This helps your yogurt not taste like whatever you cooked in here last. I added milk all the way to the fill line and set the yogurt setting to boil. This is going to bring the milk to temperature, which is about 180 degrees, and it takes about 35 to 40 minutes. I will also leave a link to a website with the instructions on how to do this in case you'd like to do it yourself. Next is the brown sugar syrup. It's just simple syrup. equal parts water and sugar. I used 1 cup of each, and you bring it to a little bit of a simmer, about on medium heat. Stir it up really well, and then once it starts bubbling and getting frothy, I just reduce the temperature to a lower temperature, and once it thickens up like this, I just turn off the heat and let it set to the side and cool. I wanted to make some mini waffles to store in the freezer for easy breakfast, and this is pretty self-explanatory. I just made the pancake mix with some cinnamon and vanilla, added enough water to get to the consistency that I like, and cooked them in the mini waffle iron. This made 12, which I stored in silicone bags in the freezer for later use. When the milk has reached the boiling point, the Instant Pot will beep at you like this. It is very important that the milk reaches 180 degrees, so I like to check it, and if it's not quite there yet, I set the Instant Pot to saute and let it heat up for another couple of minutes, stirring regularly. It's important not to walk away from it at this point because it might burn. I checked the temperature again, and when I was happy with it, I took out the inner pot and let it set out, covered for about an hour, until the temperature fell to 110 degrees. At this point, I added 2 big tablespoons of the yogurt, mixed it up really well with a whisk, then put it back in on the yogurt setting for 10 hours. You can usually set this for 8 to 12 hours, but I like 10. I feel like it's just the right amount of sour. When the timer goes off, I covered it with a plate and put it in the fridge to set overnight. I always like to prep these chicken quarters up ahead of time. The blood and yuck in the bag is gross, so I like to wash it off from the chicken, then separate the drum from the thigh, and also cut off all these extra little yucky bits. I ended up with these bags of drumsticks, the thighs, and 2 full quarters that I'm leaving apart to make broth. Next, I went ahead and cooked all of the drumsticks and some thighs so that meat would be ready for meals over the next couple of days, and put the rest of it in the freezer. I seasoned these with chicken bouillon powder and my favorite Badia Complete seasoning mix, and baked them at 400 degrees for 35 minutes. While those baked, I used the quarters I had set aside to make the broth and seasoned it with salt and pepper and more complete seasoning. I like using this because it has a lot of aromatics in it already, which helps when you don't have veggies to add to the broth. I cooked this on the stove for 2 hours. I stored the meat from the oven in the refrigerator once it cooled, and shredded the chicken from the broth as well as saving the bones for later use. I stored the broth in 3 old pasta jars. Much to the dismay of my husband, I have an enormous amount of old jars that I save and reuse for everything from food storage to arts and craft supplies. I started off dinner by making a small batch of mini biscuits. This recipe wasn't perfect since I portioned the ingredients from the recipe I usually use, but it did the trick. I used 2 cups of flour, 3/4 of a stick of margarine that I blended into the flour with a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which I almost forgot. I mixed in water until the dough became shaggy, which was right about 3/4 of a cup. I folded the dough over a few times to create some layers, then rolled out the dough to a 1/2 inch thickness and cut them into small squares. These baked for 12 minutes at 400 degrees. While those biscuits were baking, I boiled all the shells in salted water, and yes, that is the same pot I made the broth with. Then, once the biscuits were done, I put a little margarine on the top of each one of them and put them in a container for later. Next, I put some barbecue sauce that I had in my fridge from a previous video on 7 of the drumsticks and put them in the oven until they were heated and the skin was crispy. Next, I started on the mac and cheese, and I also set aside a cup and a half of noodles for a recipe that I was going to make later. I melted about a third of the Velveeta with some butter and milk to make a cheese sauce, and when that was ready, I added the noodles to the sauce and put the rest of the yogurt I had saved onto them with some garlic salt, pepper, and a little cinnamon. I know the cinnamon probably sounds weird, but I swear it cuts a little of that saltiness from the Velveeta out of it. When the chicken was heated up, I added some of the biscuits to the tray to heat them up as well and added a little bit of margarine in each biscuit when they were being served. I also made the green beans for this dinner with some margarine, salt, and pepper that I forgot to film. This was a great dinner to start the week with, and everyone really enjoyed it. The next morning, we pulled the yogurt out right away to check it, and it was perfect. We had cinnamon sugar toast and some yogurt with granola and sweetened with a little brown sugar syrup. My husband had a bigger bowl of yogurt and granola with a banana. Just a heads up when I'm making these breakfasts as well, I am not a breakfast eater. I never eat breakfast. I usually fast until about 1 or 2 in the afternoon and eat lunch. So if it looks like we do not have enough breakfast food, it's just because there's only 1 adult eating and 2 little kids. Hey, so today is our first full day. You already saw breakfast, but now that I have some free time after I pick my daughter up from preschool, we are going to go ahead and get this yogurt prepped up into what I want to utilize it for this week. I'm just going to make some regular yogurt that I'm going to sweeten with the brown sugar syrup. And then I also wanted like a crema to put on tacos or something like that. So I'm going to make that. And my daughter has requested cream cheese, so I'm going to strain it out a lot and get a bunch of the whey out to try and thicken it up a little bit, and then we can use that as kind of a mix of like cream cheese or sour cream this week. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm setting aside about as much of the yogurt as I wanted to keep just to have for breakfasts. I am going to add a little bit of the brown sugar syrup to sweeten this up. You can also sweeten this with honey or maple syrup, powdered sugar, kind of whatever you have on hand. For the crema style sauce, I'm setting a little more aside and I'm seasoning this with some lime juice and salt and then thinning it out a little bit with some milk. I also have a couple of these little sauce bottles from Walmart. They're 98 cents, so I put it in there for easy serving. Lastly, I seasoned up the rest of the yogurt that I had left in the insert with some salt, and I put it in a strainer over a bowl with a bunch of paper towel on the bottom and on the top. This is going to help separate the whey, and I put it in the refrigerator overnight in the back of my fridge. It usually takes about 24 hours to set up nice, but you could go for even longer than that. So this was everything that I was able to make with the rest of the yogurt. This is going to be a cream cheese style Greek yogurt, so nice and thick and spreadable. Crema for tacos and sweetened yogurt for breakfast. We might have to add a little bit more sweetener, but I tried not to do too much just in case we wanted a little bit more mild. But yeah, that's everything I got. For lunch, I was really craving jerk chicken, but I wanted to use up some of the leftovers from yesterday. I cut up 2 of the chicken thighs that I had baked, and then I heated up the macaroni and cheese and started a roux in a skillet with some butter and some flour. I also added some jerk seasoning to it to give it a little of the flavor that I wanted, and then I added some chicken broth once the flour had cooked. I made sure this was mixed up really, really well and kept adding broth to it until it got to the consistency that I wanted, and then I went ahead and added the chicken thighs to it. When the mac and cheese was heated up all the way, I plated some up for the kids as well as some chicken for my daughter, and then I added all the noodles to the jerk gravy and let that cook together for a few minutes. I put some carrot sticks on the plate for the kids and packaged up my husband's to take to work. And this is lunch, day 1, all plated up. For dinner, I made teriyaki stir fry, so I started out by making a quick teriyaki sauce with 4 tablespoons of sugar syrup, 1 teaspoon of ginger, everything bagel seasoning because I don't have sesame seeds and I wasn't going to buy any for this, some garlic, and some honey, and a half a cup of soy sauce. You could use less if you don't have that much or if you don't want that much sodium. I mixed this up with a bit of cornstarch to thicken it up and some water. Then I put it in a small saucepan and heated it on medium until it started to bubble, and then stirred it and reduced this heat to low and simmered for 20 minutes or so until it thickened up and the flavors combined. Meanwhile, I cut up some broccoli, carrots, and onion and cooked half of the box of linguine. When the noodles were done, I cooked the veggies with some salt and pepper, and I also put in 2 shredded chicken thighs. Then I added the noodles and the teriyaki sauce and let it cook until everything was hot and the veggies were done all the way through. I served this with some sriracha on my husband and I's bowls, and this was so good there were no leftovers. The next day was the second full day, and I decided to make some mini chicken biscuits with the leftover biscuits. There were 15 biscuits left, so I air fried 15 chicken nuggets and made a little sweet and spicy sauce with the syrup and some cayenne pepper. I heated up the biscuits and assembled these like little sandwiches with some syrup on them. My daughter helped me plate all these up, and my husband took everything that wasn't eaten for a snack at work. When lunchtime came, we checked on the thickened yogurt and found that it had frozen a little in the back of the fridge. We also discovered it needed a little bit more moisture pulled out, so I took it out of the strainer onto a plate and covered it with some more paper towel and put it in the fridge. My husband also called and said he'd be home early and not to bring him lunch, so I made some chicken and noodles for me and the kids with the leftover pasta and a cut up chicken thigh. I also used a few of the baby carrots chopped up with the chicken broth. I seasoned this with some salt and pepper, some chicken bouillon powder, and a little oregano. We had this with toast, and my daughter requested cream cheese toast, so we used the yogurt for that, and I put the rest away in a container. This was a quick and unimpressive yet tasty lunch. For our third dinner this week, we had meatball gyros. So I started by making some flatbreads with 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of oil. I added water until the dough became shaggy, which was about 3/4 cups, and kneaded it until it formed into a ball. I let it rest, and I got started on the potatoes. I washed 5 potatoes and sliced them into wedges, and because I wasn't cooking them right away, I put them into a bowl of salted ice water to keep them from getting brown, and it helps pull some of the starch out too. When the dough was ready, I split it into 6 pieces and rolled each piece into a ball. I rolled the dough into the desired shape. I like them kind of elongated, then put them onto a super hot, ungreased cast iron skillet. These only cook for a couple minutes on each side and are ready to flip when they start to bubble and get dark spots. I put a little margarine on each of these as I pulled them from the pan and stored them under a towel to keep them from drying out. My daughter also made these super cute little ones for her and her brother. She said they're flowers, but I feel like they look like cow spots. Next was the meatballs, so I toasted 4 pieces of toast to make breadcrumbs as a binder. I cut them into super tiny pieces, then toasted them again to make sure they were nice and crispy. I took out a full pound of ground turkey and added a tablespoon or so of some Gyro seasoning that I made up. I'll leave a recipe for this in the description box. I didn't have every seasoning that was on the list, but I had most of them and made do. I then added all of the breadcrumbs I made and mixed them up until it was well combined. I made most of the mixture into what I consider to be standard size meatballs, and the rest I made into little ones. While those were in the oven, I took the potatoes out of the water and dried them off in a clean kitchen towel. I seasoned these with the Gyro seasoning and some oil and baked them for 40 minutes or so on about 400. Once the meatballs were done, I sliced them up because I feel like they're easier to eat in the flatbreads, and then added them to the tray with the potatoes to get them hot again, since they came out way before the potatoes were done. I sliced up some lettuce, tomato, and raw onion, which I served on my Gyro, and the kids had theirs with the flatbread on the side, as well as some carrot sticks. I made these flatbreads so long so I can roll them in the bottom into a cone shape so they're easier to hold. These were so good, and I was stuffed. This was my husband's favorite meal of the week. Breakfast for everyone this morning was waffles and some yogurt with granola. Because it has been 2 full days and 1 dinner, I figured we should go through the food that we still have left to use up. So this is where we're at. We've got this much milk, some yogurt. There's a decent amount in there. The little mini meatballs we made last night, some cream cheese, teriyaki sauce. There is the rest of the chicken thighs from when we made broth, and 3 chicken legs in here to use. And then these are the chicken thighs I threw in the freezer. I'm taking them out of the freezer to thaw to use over the next couple days. About half a bag of carrots, pound of ground turkey, lettuce, tomato and a half, part of an onion, 3 broccoli crowns, half of this box of linguine. Still have the pound of pinto beans and the pound of rice. About 2/3 of the bag of chicken nuggets. Most of this box of pancake mix, because all I've used it for so far is prepping those waffles. Alfredo sauce, chili powder, corn, diced tomatoes, 2 bananas, which are getting kind of brown, so I should use these soon, or use them in something at least. Most of this container of the cheese, 2 flatbreads from last night, most of this loaf of bread. I think there's like 2/3 of the loaf. 2 sticks of butter. There is a half a stick in the refrigerator, but I didn't get it out. Granola, most of the potatoes, 2 of these things of chicken broth, and then this is almost 2 cups exactly of the flour that I have left. And then I just have the yogurt sauce and the syrup that I made. So this is everything. I'm hoping that I can get through the rest of the week with all of this. I don't think it should be a problem if I plan correctly, but it is going to be tight to get through a full 7 days. So we'll see what we can come up with. My husband called me for lunch and said he was starving, so I pivoted my original plans for this half pound of turkey and made chopped cheese inspired sandwiches. I cooked the turkey with some diced onions and seasoned with some complete seasoning and pepper. After the meat was cooked, I added a bit of the cheese and melted it into the meat. I assembled these like grilled cheeses with ketchup on my husband's, and I put mustard, lettuce, and tomato on mine. The kids had some grilled cheese. I figured a perfect use for these leftover flatbreads was to make some curry, so I shredded up the rest of the meat on those drumsticks and peeled and chopped 2 potatoes and some onions. I put all of this in a skillet and also got 1 cup of rinsed rice cooking on the stovetop with some margarine and salt. When the potatoes started to soften up, I added the last of my curry powder, which was about a tablespoon, as well as some cumin, chili powder, turmeric, and salt and pepper. I toasted up these seasonings a bit to release the flavors, then added a can of diced tomatoes and some broth. I let this cook at a simmer for about 20 minutes. When the potatoes were mostly cooked, I shook up a tablespoon of cornstarch into a half a cup of milk and added it to the curry. I stirred this up and let it cook for a few minutes to thicken up. I wouldn't usually use cornstarch, but I didn't have coconut milk or cream, and that usually thickens it up a lot nicer than milk, so I had to switch it up a little bit. I served this with some rice in the middle and the heated up flatbreads on the side, as well as some yogurt sauce on top. It was so flavorful and comforting, and the baby especially loved his rice with the curry mixed in. We also had enough leftovers that my husband was able to take them for lunch to work the next day. The next day is day 6, full day number 5. And everyone had yogurt and the rest of the pre-made waffles were used. I decided to use up the rest of those mini meatballs with some gravy over mashed potatoes, so I peeled and boiled these potatoes and started the gravy with a roux. I made up some beef broth with 1 cup of water and a bouillon cube and added it to the skillet with a heaping spoonful of that cream cheese style yogurt and a bunch of black pepper. I stirred all that in well, then added the mini meatballs and let it cook while I finished the potatoes. When these were fork tender, I used a potato masher, then added a little milk to these and mixed them up. I also added a tablespoon or so of margarine and seasoned with garlic salt and pepper. This lunch was far from impressive, but it was very tasty, it was very filling, and my kids got the mashed potatoes that they wanted. In between lunch and dinner, I had some free time, so I decided to prep up the rest of the chicken thighs and debone 4 of them. I was left with 2 regular thighs and 4 boneless, skinless ones. I used 2 of those boneless, skinless thighs for dinner and diced them up and cooked them in a skillet with margarine, garlic salt, paprika, and oregano. On the back burner, I had the rest of the linguine cooking as well, and when the chicken was mostly cooked, I added some chopped up broccoli, seasoned with salt and pepper, and let it cook until the broccoli was tender. Then I added the Alfredo sauce and put a little water in the jar to make sure that all of it was out. When everything was heated through, I added the majority of the noodles to the sauce and mixed it together. My daughter doesn't like sauce on her noodles, so I left some aside for her. She's in her buttered noodle phase. Honestly, I can't blame her though, because sometimes I feel like I'm in a buttered noodle phase, still at 35. But anyways, this was dinner and it was delicious. Alright, so this morning I needed to use up these bananas, so I mashed them up with some cinnamon and vanilla. I added about 1.5 cups of the pancake mix and a 1/2 cup or so of water, as well as a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder to give it a good rise. Sorry that I don't have exact measurements, this is honestly just how I cook. I poured this into a pie dish and baked it at 375 for 30 minutes. I served this with some sugar syrup on top, and my daughter said it tasted like banana cake, so this was a hit. I did not film lunch today because all I did was heat up the rest of the chicken nuggets that we had in the air fryer, use up the rest of the sliced bread for grilled cheeses, and some carrot sticks for the kids. So that's all I got. I'll show you what our plates look like. All right, this is lunch today. Not anything special. I've got some chicken nuggets left over here for my husband because I'm going to make him a grilled cheese as well, but he's not ready for lunch yet. And I don't have carrots because apparently I don't care about nutrients for myself. And this baby is hungry, so we don't eat. Okay, so for dinner, and this was my favorite dinner of the week, I made baked enchiladas. I needed to make tortillas but was running low on flour, so I added a 1/2 cup of pancake mix to the flour and sifted it all together. I set some aside for dusting and was left with 2 cups of flour. To this, I added 2/3 of a cup of warm water with 1/2 stick of margarine melted into it, as well as some salt and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I kneaded this the same way I kneaded the flatbread, and when it was ready, I set it under a towel to rest. As my dough was resting, I cooked my washed and sorted beans in the Instant Pot with the rest of the jar of broth, some water, and some salt. I split this dough into 8 portions and rolled it out as thin as possible. Admittedly, I'm not a very good tortilla maker, so no need to point out in the comments that these could be better because I'm fully aware of my shortcomings. Thank you. My son also wanted to help out, which was just so stinking cute. As I was making these, and the more my son was involved, they became less thin and tortilla-like and more thick and naan-like, but that's okay too. When the beans were done, I set some aside for refried beans and put the rest in a container. I cleaned the pot and cooked the 2 chicken thighs that were still on the bone with some chili powder and chicken bouillon seasoning. These cooked on high pressure for 25 minutes. When the chicken was done, I pulled it out and set it aside to shred it and deglaze the insert the best I could and added 1/3 of a cup of rinsed rice to use up as much of that seasoning as possible. When that rice was done, I added it to the chicken and beans and mixed it all together for the filling. Since we also don't have cheese to put inside of them, I made a mixture with the rest of the cream cheese yogurt, some chili powder, cumin, garlic salt, and lime juice. I did not purchase canned enchilada sauce, so I made some enchilada gravy with some margarine and flour and used what was left of that Gyro seasoning since a lot of the seasonings in it I would add into this anyways. When the seasonings were toasted, I slowly added in 1.5 cups of water with a little bit of vinegar. And when everything was combined, I added a few chunks of the Velveeta cheese to it and melted it in it since we do not have regular cheese to top them. I filled each of these with some of the cream cheese spread and the filling mixture, then topped it with the rest of the gravy. These baked covered on 400 for 30 minutes. To use that can of corn, I also made a little bit of a corn salad with the rest of this cream cheese and added some mayo, chili powder, and lime juice. The beans had been waiting so patiently, so I added some margarine, turned up the heat, and mashed away to make some refried beans. I also seasoned these with a little bit of complete seasoning and some chili powder and salt. While everything was cooking, I had cut up some lettuce and tomato as well to make a little salad on the side, and as usual, I always have a giant jar of pickled jalapenos in my fridge, so we use those too. This was everything, and once again, this was so good, and we even had a couple left over. This morning for breakfast, everyone just had some more of that pancake bake, and for lunch, I decided to make some chili cheese fries. I started this chili with some diced onion and the other half of that pound of ground turkey, which I seasoned with salt and pepper, and then when the turkey was done, I added a big tablespoon of chili powder, some garlic, and a little oregano. Once all of those seasonings were nice and toasty, I added the rest of my leftover beans. And as I was cooking this and tasted it, I decided I needed a little bit more chili powder, so I went ahead and added that too. The potatoes I washed and cut into spears. We definitely like our fries more like steak fries, so that's what I usually make. I seasoned these with some oil and, surprise, some complete seasoning mix. I cooked these on 425 for a half hour. I used about half of what was left of the Velveeta cheese to make a cheese sauce with some milk, and when the fries were done and the chili was hot, I put everything on this serving tray for my husband and I to pick at for lunch. I also topped it with some of that yogurt sauce, and this was so good. The kids just had some fries on the side with a little chili and some carrot sticks. This was our last dinner for this $50 budget week, so I wanted to use up a few of the ingredients that I had, which included the rice, chicken, some broth, and as well as some more of this cheese. That sounded a lot like chicken and rice to me, so I cooked up the chicken. Next, I made the rest of the rice, seasoned with some chicken bouillon. Then made something like a cream of chicken with the rest of the broth. I made sure all of this was combined really, really well, and then I went ahead and added a half a cup of milk with about a teaspoon of the chicken bouillon powder and sliced up some of that cheese to melt directly into it. I also had a little bit of broccoli left, so I cut that up and added it to the casserole dish. I did not cook it ahead of time because I thought it would get too mushy.
I added a bit of cheese sauce and mixed all the rice up, then added a little bit more cheese sauce on top, as well as some water and covered it with some foil. This was everything plated up, and it was super yummy.
All right, so we are in a little bit different spot. We are in my living room and not my kitchen. There is my kiddo's head. We had a little bit of terrible news involving the passing of my sister's dog. So we're just kind of in and out of the house today, and I really don't have time to film the rest of our food. We had a bunch of pancakes to use up some of that pancake mix. And for lunch today, we are going to have the enchiladas and the leftover chili. I also have about a half a stick of butter, a bunch of granola, some of that corn. I also have a little bit of milk left over and a couple other odds and ends, but I pretty much used up everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert a couple clips from lunch that we reused, and I hope you enjoy. All right, everybody, that's it. That's what I made this week for $50 to feed my family. I also want to use this time to say thank you, everyone that made it this far to the end of the video. Thank you to those of you that keep coming back. And it's totally crazy, but in the last week, since I have started editing this video to now finishing it, we reached 1,000 subscribers, which is just totally crazy to me because I didn't even know if I would make it to 100 when I started this a couple months ago. So seriously, thank you to all of you that are liking my videos and commenting nice supportive things. And yes, the baby says thank you too. But yeah, it honestly just really means a lot to me. So thank you. I've got another couple videos that I'm working on, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I have coming in the next couple weeks. So I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.